to forever, making life better and better. Apple to forever and ever, bringing the rainbow to you.
So, you would like to know about Apple II clones coming from behind the Iron Curtain. It's not so easy, so I divided this into three parts. One, the short story, all the truth about it on one slide. Then the long story in two sections. One, definitions and the historical and economical background. Under what conditions these computers were produced and how it affected their quality, quantity, design. And at the end, the best technical details about these clones. The short story. There were almost no Apple computers behind Iron Curtain, and only few clones, and production of these clones took part in Eastern Europe only, not in Central Europe. And these clones were not available to buy for public. They were only for organization and schools. The Iron Curtain itself was based on a demarcation line from 1945 and divided the world to Soviet section, Soviet satellites and Soviet Union, and the remaining rest of the world. The physical appearance was slightly different on different sections. Between German republics, they had more concrete walls, but typical physical appearance was this: 3 lines of electric fans. Later, the deadly voltage was replaced by just electronic sensors because the high voltage was too much energy consuming and expensive. Sand for better footstep readings, anti-tank obstacles, watching towers, and what's not seen, minefields, anti-infantry minefields, and almost 10 kilometers, about, let's say, 7 miles, wild, no-go zone, where villages were demolished, the population moved away. The size, the area of such a zone at German and Austrian border was more than 1% of the whole state. Time for a joke. Father and son walking through the forest, they arrive to the fence. The son has a question: who lives behind the fence? The answer is, we do. And that's just about it. It wasn't meant mainly to prevent intrusion, but it was to prevent emigration. It was its main goal. Most dangerous was the section on Romanian border. On Czechoslovak border, about 300 people died. It's almost the same number as on the Berlin Wall, the black dot in Eastern Germany. It's also part of the curtain. The best description of what it's about was in 1984. So, you know, it's doublethink. It's exactly what Soviet propaganda is about. It's more like political correctness, to name things by not so appropriate name. For example, now we have not war, but special military operation. He didn't crash with his plane. He heroically died, fulfilling his fighting task. And everything was fighting task, even to order more potatoes for a canteen. War is peace. It's still the same. We were just fighting for peace. Freedom is slavery. The slavery in communism was freedom because it freed people of care about themselves. The state will do everything for you. And Western freedom is just slavery with that unemployed people and poor people and so on. Ignorance is strength. It's clear. It was prohibited to listen to foreign radios. Of course, it wasn't the same as under German occupation. To listen to foreign radio, London, for example, they will shoot you to head under German occupation. This wasn't the same, just imprisonment. And these radios like Free Europe, Voice of America, London were jammed. It was technically also impossible to listen to them. It was very, very hard. Time for joke. The experience is untransferable. So American goes to, let's say, Czechoslovakia. This is somehow Czechoslovak-centric point of view, just because my experience. American comes to Czechoslovakia. How do you do? Well, we can't complain. And he says, our lives are perfect, but we can complain. On the left side, just memories. I don't know if you remember cleaning your gas mask every year in school and the drill with raincoats and plastic bags. Only the older generation. But my childhood was exactly this. My gas masks were produced 1956 and the bigger one later 1958. So even then they were more than 30 years old. Why such thing? Remember 1984, so let's party like it's 1984 with gas mask. You need two enemies, one of them outside. So, you know, there are these imperialists, murderers from Wall Street. They have their rockets, and the only thing they want to do is to throw them to us. Who knows why? Maybe it's some way how to make more dollars somehow. But posters like this one we had in school. It was also outside, almost everywhere. And now try to imagine, instead USA, try to imagine NATO or Ukraine. It's still the same propaganda. The Soviet Union is still alive. And the other enemy should be inside. And the enemy should be you. Many things were presented as voluntary. But if you didn't attend in parades, you didn't decorate your window with flags, both Czechoslovak and Soviet, the flag of occupying country, you had problems. Didn't attend on great October Socialistic Revolution anniversary, didn't attend on Labor Day, didn't decorate on Day of Liberation by the Soviet Army Day, you will have problems. They could change your job, let's say from the head of marketing department to security or so, or from doctor to tram driver. You didn't decorate your windows, so no school for your children. Do you think about university for your children? Didn't decorate? Forget about it. And even high school. I was one of those where we expected I will not go to high school just because obstruction from the side of the communists. Of course, Russian everywhere, not only in school, but also, for example, scientific publications. You could publish in local language, but if you think about publishing internationally, the first way was Soviet magazines and in Russian. To publish something in the West in English was suspicious because it can be sign that you are thinking about immigration. Copy machines. I haven't seen one until the end of communism. Why? Because it's tool that can spread anti-communism propaganda. And now imagine how to make, for example, computer club bulletins, leaflets, magazines, if you have no copy machine. Moreover, it's not possible to publish anything as an individual. You needed permission to publish anything, and the permission only organization could have. More about it later. Most funniest part of them all, elections. Communist Party is the leading party by constitution, period. To achieve democracy-like appearance, more political parties were allowed to exist, but not to share power. You could drop your vote sheet to the box, but you had no choice. Yeah, only in coalition with Communist Party, these other parties could send their candidates, but they must fulfill the program of Communist Party. No other choice. Attendance, again, it's voluntarily mandatory. Attendance about 99%. If you didn't vote, you will have problems. It was mainly in villages, not so much in big cities, but in villages where everyone knows about everyone. They just went to you, hey, you didn't attend, we want 100% attendance, you didn't attend, you broke it, let's go and vote. The worst result ever was 99.7% for the Communist Party, which means there were 200,000 brave people with invalid vote sheets. And elections were, of course, postponed after the invasion. Economics. Everything was driven by COMCON, the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, sitting in Moscow. That building of former COMCON now serves as a city hall in Moscow. Everything was state-owned, centralized, planned, closed, military-oriented, and surprisingly, export was done with loss. State-owned. That means that it belongs to one, to the state. So everyone and no one. Everyone wants have some profit, but no one cares about it. Centralized. Everything was driven just by center in Moscow. And on a local level, no decision could be made. It was closed, of course, divided by the curtain. The currencies in ComCon countries were not freely exchangeable, convertible for other currencies like German, West German mark, Swiss franc, American dollar. They could only circulate inside ComCon countries and were in fixed ratio to Russian ruble, of course in favor of ruble. The only mistake you can do with such closed type of economics is to print edition money. That's one of causes, one cause of many others why Soviet Empire collapsed. They just added money, more money, and disaster like inflation come. So, if your currency is not freely convertible, if you get some foreign currency, for example, working abroad, truck driver, or someone from the West, relative, some maybe, send you money, you will not receive money. You will receive special coupons that you can use in special shops, tuzeks, with only imported goods. It was not possible to obtain these coupons for local currency. Of course, there was black market, not legal way. So if this was the only possibility to reach imported goods, it means to get in touch with computer, you needed these coupons. This one is too complicated, we can skip it if no, we are short on time. So, again, you want a computer. You don't have freely convertible currency. How you can import a computer from abroad? Sharp MZ 800 after the end of production was exchanged with Japan for wooden kitchen utensils. This is British enterprise networked computer. They wanted them in Soviet Union, in Kazakhstan for their schools. And they changed them for native copper. I don't know if your school has enough native copper to change it for computers. So again, Czechoslovak-centric point of view. First legal import, 1984. Sword M5, Japanese computer. European version was produced in Ireland, so it's also available in Great Britain, Ireland. But there was special batch of 1,000 computers imported to Czechoslovakia. They have different serial numbers than the British version. Obtainable for these coupons only. Imported goods. If you don't have foreign currency, you can buy them. Later, Ataris and of course Sinclair computers were imported. And after the end of their production, remaining stock of Sinclair computers was available in normal shops for local currency, in paper shops. That was something exceptional, unbelievable. Computer for money that you already had for local currency. Of course, the Sharp MZ, it was just changed for goods, not for foreign currency, so they could sell it for local currency. And very late, a clone of Sinclair computer, locally produced. In Hungary, they had a special focus on computers which were unsuccessful, and after their end of production, they acquired the remaining stock. So platforms like Commodore 16 or Enterprise are quite common in Hungary and very popular here. So if you are looking for something rare, maybe in Hungary they have it. And of course, there was a way. It's so-called individual import. If you or some of your relatives traveled abroad, he can buy a computer here. The slide I skipped said that you can have only $300 per year maximum if you travel abroad. But it's enough to buy, let's say, Sinclair, the cheapest option. And the other advantage of Sinclair computers is it's very small, so it fits inside the box with chocolate. It can be transferred easily through customs. Mainly computers which were available in neighboring countries were imported. Germany, Austria. So computers which were available there were the most imported goods. C64 Commodore, Atari, usually without disk drive, because disk drive was as expensive as the computer itself. So mostly they were just with cassette tape. Schneider, German clone of British Amstrad CPC. Why not Apple II? First, in Germany and Austria, they were not widespread. Maybe in France, Britain, but not so much in Germany and Austria. And the German version of Apple IIe came very late. Second, they were expensive. And including disk drives, they were just overpriced, impossible to reach them. Computers with Motorola 68000 processors. Of course, some people had Atari STs. They were quite cheap. It was possible to literally smuggle them over the border, but it was embargoed. There was embargo on this processor. On the picture here you can see what? Pershing rockets. And it's said that this processor was the controlling processor of this rocket. Time for joke. When we will got our first 32-bit processor? When first Pershing will arrive? Yeah. This one is about difficulties in computer production. First, parts, chip production. 30 to 60% of them were actually faulty, not working at all or very slow. So there was tendency to use also these faulty parts. For example, slow ROM, you can't use as usual ROM, but it can happily work in slow ROM disk. Everything was delayed. These IBM 5285 from 1980 started production as clone 1989. Computer with 8-inch drives made of Intel 3000 processor slices. It didn't have microprocessor. It was made of slices for such big boards full of chips, hundreds of chips, and wire-wrapped bus. But the biggest problem were not the chips. You can replace it somehow or invent something, but mechanical parts were the biggest problem. Connectors, keyboards. So they used just what was available on this Soviet Sinclair clone. You can see 5-pin DIN connectors. This one, 1988, it's seriously meant made your keyboard from doorbell buttons. Even in some professional production, they used, for example, telephone buttons or so on. For military purposes, there were, of course, quality keyboards available with contactless switches, Hall effect. But in low numbers, usually to be exported to Soviet Union, just because military purposes, and not possible to buy them as individual, just for organizations. More about the quality. 77% or 56% of washing machines, 30% of color televisions, and 60% of let's go back, of black and white televisions needed warranty repair in the first 2 years of their life. For example, here, the upper panel, too thin painting on it, so it just gets rusty. And are they available as spare parts? We got 15 of them in 2 years and need 94 more. So some are waiting for warranty repair 2.5 years. And next question, will the new upcoming washing machines be better with higher quality? No. Sorry, I skipped one part. Let's go. Next. Freezer. The price of freezer is 3,000 Czechoslovak crowns. The price of warranty repair is more than 2,000 Czechoslovak crowns. And it's repair which is typical for this freezer. Notice the environment, the working environment. Usually this was all done on pre-war machines with pre-war equipment, because there was no plan, everything was planned. There was no plan for innovation, replacement, new machines. Production of CNC head for Canada. They export them to Canada with profit, not with loss, as is usual in machinery. And again, everything is done on pre-war machines. And no hope to get new. But there is pressure to produce more and better quality. But you can't push the machine over its limit. And these machines are not produced in COMCON countries, so you can't buy them for rubles or the local currency, and there are no planned money to buy them from abroad. And the same was in computer industry. Usually pre-war machines or lines meant to build German radios during the war. With usually no soldering mask. If you had shortage of, let's say, disk controller, usually the chip looks like this. These two boards are the same as this one, this one chip. It's disk controller. It can read disks. It can write to disk. But it can't format the disk. You need different computer to format the disk. These two you can see quite similar. On the right side, East Air German Robotron 1715. On the left side, FK1 single board computer. You can see processor, ROMs, RAMs. Below its video circuitry. On the left side, mouse interface, parallel serial, and this is the same as on this board. Floppy interface made of two 8-bit parallel gates and one timer. On the left side, Intel clones. On the right side, Zilog clones. Two PIOs and one CTC. And note the soldering mask on the East German product. It's very exceptional. And now look at this. Wozniak's Disk 2. 8 chips, it can read, write, format the disk. Genius. Compared to the others. Production of computers in ComCon countries was divided into 3 groups. First, mainframes. It started with creativity. Own systems like Soviet Minsk, Ural, Czechoslovak EPOS. In Soviet Union, they had also Saturn computer, which didn't use nor decimal, nor binary, but trinary. But it's another story. Later, licenses appeared. It was possible to buy license or illegal copies. Polish Odra was compatible with ICL, but it was not licensed. And later, the ComCon established ECEVM, Unified System of Electronic Computers, which basically were clones of IBM 360 and later 370. There was such high number of these clones that after end of communism, IBM offered software and service for these clones. Mini computers, no space for creativity, just clones. Hewlett-Packard, Israelis Elbit 100. In Romania, they had a TPA computer, which was clone of PDP-8. And later, it was all grouped to SMEVM, System of Small Electronic Computers, which was focused originally mainly on PDP-11, later VAX, and surprisingly, IBM PC fell into this group. It was not considered microcomputer by ComCon. Microcomputers. To produce microcomputers, you need microprocessors. The original idea was that as a military important thing, it should be produced in Soviet Union only. But their capacity was low, quality low, so they decided to assign each country their processor to be produced there. So East Germany, Zilog Z80, Czechoslovakia, Intel 8088 and Slices 3000. In Yugoslavia, they had a clone of RCA 1802. You know it as Kosmak 11. And happy Bulgaria with 6502. The advantage of clones was that they already had software library. If you build in-house design, in-house system, you had no software for it. Only some computers were available in shops, surprisingly mostly clones, but usually they were not available. They were for organizations or schools only. Surprisingly, mostly in-house designs. There were exceptions, but usually it was like this. To get in touch with a computer, if you hadn't one at home, usually you can visit some computer club. But it's potentially dangerous thing. And these potentially dangerous hobbies like railway modeling, RC models of ships, cars, airplanes, ham radios, even driving schools, and of course computers. It was all supervised by the Union for Cooperation with Army and so-called basic organizations of this served as clubs for ham radios, computers, and so on. That's not me, it's my brother on the left. To understand more about the situation, atmosphere, and how this was like, and more details are in this book. Jak obehrát železnou oponu. It's scientific work, so it's quite long, boring, but has many facts inside, interviews, literature, sources. And happy you, Schwelch is associate professor on MIT, so this book is available for, I think, $45 in English. You can find more about it inside. Again, it's Czechoslovak-centric point of view, also in this book. Back to Apple computers behind the Iron Curtain. So the import was almost zero, but I have found this Redstone Apple II clone, Apple IIe clone at the university. It was used as a controller for some chemical analysis equipment. And it worked until year 2000. Then I acquired it. It was known that Apple has some 8-bit computers, but what we have seen were usually Macintoshes after the end of communism, but not 8-bit computers. And everyone was curious how they look like, how they feel like. Why are they considered as professional computer if their parameters on paper are maybe worse than some Atari or C64? What software, how the operating system works like. So 2005, I had a presentation about Apple computers, and everyone was just astonished. It was something very surprising for everyone to see Apple computer you can touch. And such things like AppleTalk, 2GS connected to PowerBook that serves as hard drive to it. Almost impossible on other platforms. The 2GS comes from Switzerland. And the sticker on it says Department of Defense dependent schools, but I don't know about any American military base in Switzerland. Now to close. What you are waiting for. Agat was first Soviet microcomputer, and it started 1984, so you can see the delay. It was designed to be, let's say, Apple II-like, but it was different. It was designed to have 6502 processor, but there was shortage of them. They were not available. So they used 588 processors. Their instruction set is compatible with PDP-11, and software emulated 6502 processor, so it was somehow slower, the timing was not accurate, but it worked somehow in prototypes. Then they acquired real 6502 processors, surprisingly, mainly originals, Rockwell, Synertec from Mexico, India, and only few of them were from Bulgaria. Price of the computer was 3,900 Russian rubles, or Soviet rubles, with average salary in Soviet Union being 250 rubles. And they even wanted to export it for $17,000. Of all versions, 19,000 pieces were produced between 1984 and 1993. Yeah, it was based on 6502 processor. It had AppleSoft Basic inside, modified to cooperate with its hardware, because otherwise it was not compatible with Apple II. It had no Apple II compatible text or graphics modes. It has just its own, except the last version, Agat 9. So here are. Agat 4 was, let's say, prototype, less than 100, with limited expanding options, almost no slots free, without disk. Agat 7 was in fact in two configurations, 7 and 8, with slightly bigger memory. Agat 7 with one disk drive, Agat 8 with two disk drives and printer. It's the most common version of Agat. And the last version, Agat 9, had 6 slots, Apple II graphical and text modes, bigger memory, and 2 disks. The expansion slot was 60 pin, so it was incompatible with the original one. Processor originally was on separate board, but on board in Agat 9. Note again, soldering mask is missing. Disk controller was EC5088.02. AC5022.088 means that it's disk 2, and .02 means that they tried to improve it somehow in Bulgaria. It was not very reliable, so in Bulgaria they switched back to Wozniak's design, but not so in Soviet Union, and then they tried to use this design. And how to solve this? Later they came with it's just the disk controller that is used in IBM PC. But the disk formats were different, so if you wanted to read both, you needed just to have both controllers in your computer. That is how they looked like. Agat 4 had metal case with keyboard attachable to the front. Usually they were gray. but some machines were painted red to fit with the color of the television for marketing purposes, to be nicer on photographs. Agat 7 again was mainly gray, slightly higher to improve cooling. In the beginning also metal case, but later plastic, and they were a later version produced in different factory. They were produced on several places. Had black front panel and Agat 9 with similar appearance. So-called Unit 121, in fact, was Apple II Plus compatibility card, was sold separately, not available with the computer originally, but was on board the last version, Agat 9. Had its own video RAM, Apple II Plus compatible modes, and separate monitor output. So you had two monitors, one with Agat modes and one with Apple II modes. And it required reboot to compatibility mode. Had no language card support, but there was language card on board Agat 9. So Agat 9 was the most Apple II Plus compatible Agat, but less compatible with the original memory paging of Agat 7 and previous versions. It included lowercase characters, not so in previous versions. Had inbuilt processor unit 121 and language card on its board, and received new Agat modes, but one was lost, and contained interface card without serial. Previous versions had both serial and parallel, but it was Apple II parallel printer card compatible, not so in previous versions. The text and graphical modes of Agat. Colorful, 8 colors, text 32 by 32, monochrome, high resolution text, 64 characters per line, low res, 16 colors, 64 by 64 and 128 by 128, and monochrome, just 2 colors, 256 pixels. In Agat 9, the low-res mode was lost, but had new 2 modes, 4 colors in 258 pixels, and new monochrome one with high resolution 512 pixels width. And now we come to Bulgaria, to the city of Pravec, which is old Bulgarian word for the right way, the right direction. Bulgaria was very active on the field of computer industry. Sometimes 40 to 60% of computer production came from Bulgaria. They were the only country that produced 5.25-inch drives. The others had just 8-inch drives. It started 1980, sooner than in Soviet Union, with IMCO-1 produced on the Academy of Sciences, 50 pieces, but it was never sold, but it was first Apple II copy with just cassette tape. Then later the production went into the factory in Pravec. They produced also non-Apple II compatible computer like Tangerine Oric from Great Britain, their own clone, and later Pravec 16, IBM PC clone. They started with Pravec 82, surprisingly 1982, and produced 16,000 pieces of this computer. It was based on IMCO 2. Again, it started on the Academy of Sciences, but the production went to Pravec. It was just Apple II Plus with one difference. It had Cyrillic on it, switchable back to Latin. Pravec 8M was again Apple II Plus clone with CPM card on board, computer with 2 processors. Pravec 8E was not really produced in Bulgaria. It was imported in 1,300 pieces from Taiwan, so it contained no Cyrillic, as only one exception. Pravec 8A, clone of Apple IIe, maybe they copied the imported Taiwanese clone. Pravec 8C, it's not as compact as Apple IIc. It's just Apple IIe with just 3 slots and cards, expansion cards integrated on board. And the last version, Pravec 8S. Pravec 82, I said 60,000 computers were produced. Of the other versions, it was usually 2,000 to 3,000 of each version. So they are more rare than the Pravec 82. IMCO 1 on top, IMCO 2 and Pravec 82, you can see it's almost the same computer, just Apple II Plus with Cyrillic. Pravec 8E in usual Apple II-like case from Taiwan. And Pravec 8M, Pravec 8A, you can see their boards. 2 processors on the first picture. Apple IIe, including slot for language card in Pravec 8A, Pravec 8C, only 3 slots, and Pravec 8S. There is small difference in the cases. They look very similar, but the lights next to keyboard are different in MA and CS versions. Otherwise, they were just copies of their originals, so no attractive additional innovations in them. In Bulgaria, they were not sold to public. They were only in schools. So some education software was translated to Bulgarian language and they used them at school. And I think, done, finished. That's all.
Did you have any personal experience with any of the Apple II clones in the day?
I had that Pravec, I think it was version 8A, but it was around 2000 year.
Mm-hmm.
So not back the days, but later.
What kind of computer did you use in the day, if you did? Like, you know, in the sort of the 80s and 90s.
In 80s, we had one. It was industrial computer based on 8080 clone, similar to S100 type of computers like Altair and so on, and later a clone of Sinclair ZX Spectrum, because Sinclair was just the option due to its price and accessibility and available software library. There was also possibility to start production of SWORD computers. The Japanese had planned to sold the production line to Czechoslovakia, so the Communist Party asked for to assess it for recommendation, and the recommendation was we don't need sword because the available software library is for Sinclair. So we had to start production of Sinclairs, not swords. So the production did not start at all. And Sinclair clones came, let's say, 4 years later.
Yeah, I guess so. What I'm seeing in the Discord is people sharing appreciation and stories. So, which I think, you know, that's one result of a talk like this. So, thank you for bringing it up, and thank you for doing the talk, both talks, but particularly the history talk, the Iron Curtain talk. But
now I will switch to Discord and answer the questions there.
yeah, thank you for you know, staying up late for this.
Nice to meet you again.